India strongly denying President Donald Trump's sensational claim that Prime Minister Modi asked him to mediate on Kashmir. Foreign Minister Jaishankar told Parliament this morning that this was not true and that all issues with Pakistan will have to be settled bilaterally, which is India's stated position. But this statement by the Foreign Minister was not enough for the opposition, which shouted slogans in both houses and even walked out, demanding that the Prime Minister speak on the issue. Rahul Gandhi, who was out of the country, tweeted that it was a weak Foreign Ministry denial and that the Prime Minister must tell the nation what exactly happened. Meanwhile, in Washington itself, there have been attempts at damage control, with the State Department tweeting that while Kashmir is a bilateral issue for both parties to discuss, the Trump administration welcomes Pakistan and India sitting down and the United States stands ready to assist.
I would like to categorically assure the House that no such request has been made by the Prime Minister to the US. I would also reiterate that it has been India's consistent position that all outstanding issues with Pakistan are discussed only bilaterally. I would further underline that any engagement with Pakistan would require an end to cross-border terrorism.
Well, joining us on Left, Right and Centre tonight on that big story about Trump's outrageous comments, which India has hit back on, is Shashi Tharoor, Congress Member of Parliament. Shashi Tharoor, thank you for joining us on NDTV tonight. You, in fact, were among the first to say that you didn't think Trump knew what he was talking about, that he didn't understand India's position on third-party mediation, and, that the MEA, had hit back with a good statement. However, Rahul Gandhi has said that the MEA's denial was a weak one and that the Congress wants to hear the Prime Minister speak on this. Is your view at variance with that of your parties on this?
Not at all, Nidhi. I mean, I actually, it was a fairly rushed statement. I didn't complete it. I didn't at any point say that the Prime Minister should not clarify his own position. And when I watched the video and I saw Mr. Trump saying, actually, Mr. Modi, I met him 2 weeks ago, which must have been G20 in Osaka, and he said, he asked me. That becomes a very serious claim, and that requires a clarification from the only other person in the conversation, namely Mr. Modi. If it was just an offer to mediate, Mr. Trump has already done that 3 years ago in 2016, and we have already politely rebuffed him. But this time he's ascribing the wish for mediation to our Prime Minister, and that takes it one step farther. So on this issue, because after all he's not citing the Foreign Minister or the MEA, he's citing an individual by name whom he met and spoke to, that individual, who is a member of Parliament and is accountable to Parliament, is our Prime Minister, and he owes an explanation to us.
Well, Shashi Tharoor, though, I mean, if you could wear your diplomatic hat as well, how does India deal with the leader of a country who has been caught out frankly lying on numerous occasions, being economical with the truth, making a statement like this? How does India deal with President Trump?
Well, we don't have any choice, do we? He is the President of the United States. It's a very important relationship for us, a trade relationship, a defense relationship, massive people-to-people relations with a large Indian-American community there. So it is an awkward one. We just have to show our skills at dealing with whoever that society elects to represent it. Just as they have to deal with whoever represents India. In all fairness, it works both ways. But I would say that on this particular issue, Mr. Modi should be able to clarify what he said or didn't say in Parliament in a way that need not offend Mr. Trump. One possibility is that he could say, I mentioned Kashmir, but not in the context that the President imagines. It seems there's been a misunderstanding, which we're clarifying bilaterally. That kind of thing. But if he has nothing to say, that worries us, because don't forget, when I was in my first year in government and in Parliament, and I was in the MEA, we had this entire drama in Parliament about Sharm el-Sheikh, where the BJP paralyzed the House for 2 days, insisting the Prime Minister give an explanation. And Prime Minister Manmohan Singh did come and give an explanation. We are trying to say we'll do it decently. We walked out rather than try to paralyze the House. But the principle is the same. When the Prime Minister is involved, the Prime Minister must explain.
Finally, can I ask you, what do you think happened, with Donald Trump here? Do you think he misunderstood? Do you think, as some believe, that this was deliberately said by him, to poke India? What do you think has happened here?
No. I honestly think that there my original tweet stands, though it's not my place to give Mr. Trump a certificate of either character or accuracy or historical knowledge or reading his briefings. That's not my job. And I'm just expressing in that tweet a private view of an Indian citizen. I just think that Mr. Trump sometimes gets things wrong. I imagine that Mr. Modi must have used the word Kashmir in some context, and it's for him to tell us, because it would be impossible to invent something wholly out of nothing. But it's possible that Mr. Modi said either that the Pakistanis are exaggerating the situation in Kashmir, or the Pakistanis are sending militants across the ceasefire line in Kashmir. Who knows? He was unlikely to have said, it seems to me, what Mr. Trump thinks he said. But it's not enough for the MEA and the State Department to try and bury that statement when the statement is out there in public. It's been tweeted by every world news organization. The video is available. The transcript is available. Now our Prime Minister, who is the person being cited, he is being asked questions in the parliament to which he is accountable. How can he justify his silence? It seems to me a very reasonable proposition. The Congress says, you have been quoted. There are two people in the conversation. One person has given his view. Please give your view. And he could well say, listen, I said X about Kashmir and it was misunderstood and I've clarified it bilaterally. That would probably be the end of the story. But for the Prime Minister to shelter behind an External Affairs Minister who is not the party to the conversation according to Mr. Trump, but is actually a front, as it were, for our Prime Minister, that ill behoves the principle of parliamentary accountability. A Prime Minister of India owes a clarification, first of all to Parliament, and through Parliament to the Indian people. That's what I urge Mr. Modi to do, rather than letting this issue get out of control.
All right, Shashi Tharoor, thank you for joining us on NDTV this evening on that big story. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nidhi.
Well, let's go straight across to our panelists this evening. We're happy to have with us Mr. Navtej Sarna, India's former ambassador to the United States, Mr. Sheshadri Chari, member of the BJP's National Executive, strategic expert as well. Suhasini Haidar, the National and Diplomatic Affairs Editor of The Hindu, is with us tonight. Mr. Sugata Roy, Lok Sabha MP of the Trinamool Congress, and joining us from Washington this evening via Skype is Sadhanand Dume, resident fellow of the American Enterprise Institute. He's also a columnist, of course. Navtej Sarna, let me ask you first, what do you think happened here? Was it a misunderstanding? Was it a lie? What was it?
You know, far it be for me to call the most powerful man on this planet a liar, but clearly this was a statement which is, I would guess, was ill-advised, if advised at all. I think it was a Trumpian off-the-cuff remark based on a very rough understanding of situations. President Trump, as we have got to know him, is not a man who's unduly bothered with exact facts and nuances. And I think in this situation, you could see Imran Khan sort of leading him on, saying that,
Mediation.
you know, we need somebody like you to push the process. He was playing to his vanity. And President Trump proceeded because he does see himself as the ultimate deal maker. So I think in the process, the nuances of what he wanted to say became this statement.
Can I ask you though, I mean, you were dealing with the Trump administration till just a few months ago when you retired as ambassador in December last year. And what is the sense that you got in dealing with them about their understanding and his understanding in particular of the nuances of the India-Pakistan relationship and India in particular? Because this is one in a series of mishaps in the relationship, frankly.
Well, two points here. One, I think when you say their understanding and his understanding, I think there is a distinction.
Yeah.
The establishment has no confusion on this, and they are fully aware of the US policy on the matter. The president himself is known to be somebody who doesn't take very kindly to briefings. He doesn't go into details. He believes that his presence alone or his intervention alone can solve any crisis in the situation. But having said that, I would say that when you say there's been a series of mishaps, I think you have to see the series of mishaps that Trump has had with a large number of countries and a large number of leaders, including some of the closest allies of the United States. And so far, I think what I wouldn't place the tariffs and the trade issues in the same basket as some of the other things that we have actually gained in the Trump administration.
Oh, we'll talk about that in some detail. But Mr. Chari, the fact is that by saying this, you know, the damage is done, and it will take, I think, some diplomacy over the next few weeks to undo that damage. I mean, the State Department seemed to be trying to fight back in the best way that it possibly could. But how do you view this statement?
You know, I tell you, during so many of my visits to the US, I found that most Americans, including some of the American presidents, don't know the difference between Kashmir and carpets. They still call carpets as Kashmir. So that is the kind of understanding that most of those people have as far as Kashmir is concerned. As far as Trump administration is concerned, that they have already given a clarification as far as his own statement is concerned. And they stand by US policy of not interfering in India-Pakistan matters, which considering them to be bilateral issues. But US has always held this position, and US has also held a position which is closer to this, saying that if at all we have to take cognizance of Afghanistan, it would be always better to include Kashmir also into the whole issue, so that we are able to tackle Afghanistan and Kashmir together. And that is the view that Pakistan has successfully sold to the Democrats in at least Democratic administration and Obama administration also. Yeah. So they would always say that, look, if we were to help you in Afghanistan, we will have to pull out troops from Kashmir, and then we don't trust India as far as these things are concerned. So this has been their stand. So I don't think we should play into these issues. We have made our clarification very straightforward, and the American establishment also has made it. Just as Navtej said, as far as Indian establishment is concerned, we, the Prime Ministers, take advice from a large set of advisors. But as far as Trump is concerned, he is not the kind of person who take advice and then make nuanced statements. He has, there was a report somewhere saying that on an average he makes 12 to 15 statements in a day, which are not keeping in.
Okay, so you're saying let the matter rest
so
here
in a sense. I don't think we should carry to read too much between the lines.
Okay, Shugata Roy, however, the opposition wants the Prime Minister to clarify this on the floor of the House. Why is that? Why are you not satisfied with Dr. Jaishankar's statement?
We are not satisfied with Mr. Jaishankar's statement. I raised an adjournment motion asking the Prime Minister to clarify the issue, because when the President of America makes a statement that Prime Minister Modi had asked him to mediate in Kashmir, it's a very serious matter. It is obviously against India's stated position that Kashmir is an internal matter, is an integral part of our country, and we do not accept any third-party mediation either on Kashmir or on Indo-Pak relationship. As far as dialogue between India and Pakistan is concerned, we have stated repeatedly that this can happen only when Pakistan stops its terror acts. Now, here is a statement which concerns only two persons. One is President Trump and the other is Prime Minister Modi. Instead of making many comments about President Trump and analyzing his statements in the past and saying that Americans do not understand Kashmir, we should clearly ask the Prime Minister to clarify whether he had made such a statement to Mr. Trump. There is nobody else present. So, only person who can tell the truth is the Prime Minister. And the truth will be either that Mr. Modi had inadvertently mentioned this to Mr. Trump, or that Mr. Trump is plain lying. It is for the Prime Minister.
Okay. I will take what you're saying to Sahasini here.
And clarify. Just one moment.
Okay.
Any statement by Mr. Jaishankar or the External Affairs Ministry would not suffice. Mr. Modi himself, since his name is involved, must clarify before Parliament whether he had made such a comment to President Trump or not.
So, Hasni, do you
Instead
think
of
that it's a
finding
case
excuses
for the Prime Minister? Because if the Prime Minister if the Prime Minister is the one making the statement and sort of making India's position clear on the floor of the House, it actually does send a very strong message to DC that we take this seriously, this is our position, back off. You've crossed a red line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if the Prime Minister were to speak, it would be more or less a way of telling the US that India wishes to escalate this. And every kind of indication so far has been that neither does India wish to escalate it, nor in fact does the US want to go ahead on this. I think, Nidhi, the real problem is that the focus of everyone today has been simply on whether the Prime Minister said this, whether Trump is lying and all the rest. The fact is, Mr. Trump spoke from 12:13 Eastern Time on Monday to 12:55 on Eastern Time. In that space of about half an hour, 40 minutes, he actually spoke on 5 or 6 really, really difficult subjects. He spoke about Kashmir, he spoke about mediation, he spoke about India-Pakistan relations, he spoke about Pakistan's role in Afghanistan, he spoke about the solution for Afghanistan, including that very controversial statement that, you know, if he wanted to, he could finish the war in a week by killing 10 million people. So my question really is why don't we look a little closer at just why he said what he said? There are charitable explanations. Perhaps he misunderstood genuinely. You know, when India speaks about wanting the international community to hold Pakistan accountable on terrorism in Kashmir, it is possible that it can be misunderstood, but that's a very charitable explanation.
What is the uncharitable one?
The uncharitable one is a very worrying proposition that Mr. Trump, in fact, was saying something that he thought would be pleasing to his interlocutor in the room's ears, that this was the favored proposition for Pakistan in order to get something from Pakistan on Afghanistan. And I think we have to think much more closely about just what Mr. Trump's comments will mean for the region and where this is headed.
That's very important what you're saying, because then you're suggesting that those people who think he's just a big buffoon making these comments out of ignorance, it's not that. Sadanand, would you agree? I mean, there's been a lot of commentary on this in the last 24 hours, but I mean, you know, is this something, he's actually a very clever politician, he's not a fool. So should we be trying to go deeper into this, as Suhasini suggests, or is this Trump, what commonly people say is Trump being Trump, just loose on facts?
So a couple of quick points. The first is that I agree with Suhasini that the prism through which we should look at this is really Afghanistan. Now, the way I look at it, it's like, you have Trump, real estate salesman, trying to close a deal with Pakistan. It's like he's selling a 3-bedroom apartment overlooking Central Park. He wants Imran Khan to, he's trying to charm Imran Khan. He calls him a tough guy. He says Pakistan never lies. In the past, Trump has said that Pakistan lies all the time. And so he's just sort of, trying to close the deal. And while he's trying to close the deal, as you would imagine a real estate salesman would do, he is willing to play a little fast and loose with the facts. So that's my interpretation of what happened. I don't think that US policy has changed substantively. And since US policy has not changed, I think the Indian government decision to have the foreign minister dispute this in a factual manner, but refrain from escalating by getting the prime minister involved. That's the sort of first overall. The second thing is that I think we have to concede that Imran Khan has had a successful visit. He has played his cards deftly. He has been able to establish a kind of personal rapport with President Trump. He has been able to get the Kashmir issue more oxygen in Washington than we've seen for a long time. However, we should cite the fact that Pakistan is a very weak hand. So, Imran might have played that hand quite well. but that does change the fact that Pakistan's hand is much, much weaker than India's hand. And there's no reason for India to react.
Okay, so, lots of important points there. Mr. Chari, you wanted to comment on that. Sadanand agrees with Suhasini on this, that we should look at it from the Afghanistan prism. And then in that case, I mean, he's
it's very clear. It's very clear that Trump has 4 issues in front of him. One is he has his own local constituency, the US constituency. He has to go in for an election, and he has to pull out of Afghanistan. He doesn't want any more body bags, and he is under pressure to pull out of Afghanistan. And the only way he can pull out of Afghanistan, we should not also forget that just fortnight, we had a 4-country meeting, US, Russia, China, Pakistan meeting on peace process in Afghanistan, where India was kept out. So that is a subject which we have to be worried more about rather than this particular issue of Trump mentioning Kashmir. But in any case, he has to also take Pakistan on his side. For that, if he has made a statement, that's a different story. We do not know the truth about all those things, but we can always analyze whether Trump really had that in his mind. He has also to address the issue of rising China, and then he has to win over India as far as China is concerned. And the fourth and the most important element is that he wants peace in this region, so that he is able to pull out of Afghanistan without disturbing the equation between US and Pakistan. So considering all these issues, if he has made a statement, and as a great politician he has made a statement, but certainly not as a diplomat, and he doesn't claim to be a diplomat, he doesn't also want to go down in the history as a great diplomatic statement maker. So I think instead of raising this issue in the Indian Parliament, holding up the Indian Parliament, I think it is better to accept what the foreign minister has said and
not escalate it to the Prime Minister's level.
And not escalate it to the Prime Minister. At the most, it is the prerogative of the Prime Minister. Trump has not made the statement in the Congress. He has made it outside. Prime Minister can make a statement somewhere else. He can choose a
But do we have something, Navdeep Sarna, to worry about, as this Afghanistan sort of withdrawal unfolds then, about what lies ahead?
Yeah, I'll come to that, Nidhi, but I think just to wheel back a bit, there are several things that go against this theory that this is a very calculated gambit, very clever gambit to bring in Pakistan on Afghanistan, because surely if it was so clever and so well thought out, then President Trump knew that making a false statement like that would invite a refutation from India immediately, as it did. Secondly, he wouldn't be doing that keeping what he's got in mind for China, and they see India through the focus of China considerably. They would not be wanting to annoy a very important strategic partner on this by making this statement. And thirdly, if indeed it was part of a considered gambit, then certainly those denials would not have come within 24 hours.
Why would he say it?
Exactly, because this is President Trump. So this is what I'm trying to say. This is President Trump. He walks into a room thinking he's going to solve any problem. Imran Khan leads him on saying, we have this problem, why don't you help us? And he feels that, he's rising to the occasion saying it, and the facts can go out of the window. Now, whether that is because he has confused India's call for cooperation in terrorism for Kashmir,
or for whatever reason,
that is an open question, which I think is a valid question.
He went to NATO headquarters and asked who financed this building.
No, I mean, yeah, but I think there are some things which are just bloopers, and there are some things that sound like policy to me. To me, the fact that the State Department today has not chosen to backpedal on anything that he said, of those 5 comments that I put out just now, and in fact have started their new statements by saying we welcome India and Pakistan coming back to the talks table. This might be a stated policy, but remember, the US has not said it for a while. Why is Mr. Trump, is his consistent message during that meeting with Imran Khan, or the public comments that were made, was that he would like to see India and Pakistan come back to the talks table, and if he could help in any way, he do it. He repeated it 4 or 5 times. Now, some of it is style. Some of the style could just be, Trump being Trump. And certainly the comment about the Prime Minister is egregious. But I'm just saying that somewhere there is a message. We can choose to ignore it and we can just say it's just Trump being Trump. But I think you have to also look at whether the United States, and at that level, India has to deal with an entire administration, not just, think of one man's comments as frivolous, that maybe they are taking a certain position.
Sadanand, you wanted to come in on that. How does India then deal with Trump going
Let
ahead?
me just say that I agree over here with Ambassador Sarna's take. There has been no substantive change in policy. And I think Suhasini's point that, well, because the State Department hasn't flat out contradicted a sitting president indicates a change of US policy is frankly far-fetched. No one does that. That's not how bureaucrats work. If the Prime Minister of India were to make a statement that were off key, luckily that doesn't happen, the MEA would sort of find a way around that. They're not going to just say, hey, no, the Prime Minister got it wrong. So if you read the State Department, it's very clear that they are not pushing. They're trying to backpedal. They have to backpedal within the sort of keeping in mind the fact that they happen to have this erratic and thin-skinned president. They're not going to say that, Trump got it wrong. They went as far as possible in testing that. And I think that is the most straightforward explanation. I completely agree with Ambassador Sarna.
Since you call me far-fetched, Sadanand, may I ask who actually was making policy when it came to Afghanistan? How is it that Trump has said all along that he wanted to pull out of Afghanistan, announced a different policy which was clearly drafted by the State Department, and has since then backpedaled completely? So my question really is, do we have to look at what he said a little more seriously than just saying it's Trump being, Trump making a blooper?
I think you're reading too much into it.
Possibly.
No, I think troop withdrawal from Afghanistan was an old issue. Even Obama has said it many times, and Obama has actually started the troop withdrawal process.
It wasn't a part of the South Asia policy.
It was. But and Obama also said that China has the first right as far as a pivot of Asia.
But I want to ask Mr.
So all
Shigotaroy
these things they have said,
wrap.
the Americans, but I don't think the Americans have changed their policy or their strategy vis-a-vis India and Pakistan.
Okay.
I don't
Mr.
think
Roy,
so.
after
This has been a stand right from the beginning.
After hearing the arguments, I mean, and the views put forward by the other panelists today, would you reconsider this demand for demanding that the Prime Minister speak on the floor of the House, or you still want that?
No, I do not appreciate all the panditry that went on, showing off one's people's knowledge on China, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan. I do not appreciate that. Something has happened, the American president has made a statement. It can be clarified by the Indian Prime Minister, and it was not clarified by the Indian Prime Minister. The Foreign Ministry has made a statement, the Foreign Minister has made a statement which has not clarified the whole matter. Everybody went around in circles saying that America wanted to say something about Pakistan, about Afghanistan, about pulling out from Afghanistan, about how China would be involved in the matter. The simple fact is that Mr. Trump was in a discussion with Imran Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister, and at that time the present statement has come out. It has nothing to do with Afghanistan, it has nothing to do with China, it has to do with India, Pakistan and Kashmir. And
that is why
from the Indian side, we need to clarify, and that too from the Prime Minister, that we had not made any request to President
All right, well,
Trump.
let's see.
Let us not
Let's
analyze
see if the Prime Minister
Mr.
does.
Trump's
Knowing
behavior.
Mr. Modi,
Everybody knows.
the moment the media talks about it or the opposition demands it, it's not going to happen. If it does, it will happen on his own watch, as it were. But
if he has clamped up, good for him.
Well,
he has clamped up, good for him.
Well, let's see what happens.
But
Thank you
we
very
shall
much to all of
continue
you
to
for
demand
joining
Modi's
us tonight
statement.
on that important story. And let's see what happens to India-US ties over the next few weeks and months. The Prime Minister scheduled to go to New York, in fact, for the General Assembly this year in September. He'll be meeting Donald Trump there. Coming up next, the UK has a new Prime Minister and he looks eerily similar to Trump.